Imagine investing billions of dollars and years of effort on a project that can go down the drain in the blink of an eye. This is the reality of the projects we are taking a look at today. Did you know that failed megaprojects can change the course of a country's history? Well, something interesting took place in the 1690s when the Kingdom of Scotland initiated the Darien Scheme, a failed attempt to establish a colony called New Caledonia in present-day Panama. The plan was backed by the staggering 20% of the total circulating capital of Scotland at that time, and its failure left the entire Scottish lowlands in financial ruin. There are many reasons for why this megaproject failed, but poor planning and bad leadership are central causes, and it is said that more than 80% of its participants died. A bit harsher consequences for failing than today's unsuccessful megaprojects. In modern times, the United States wasted billions of dollars and 15 years on the infamous Big Dig megaproject between 1991 and 2007. The megaproject was planned to cost about $2.8 billion in 1982 dollars, but ended up costing over $22 billion. That's more than 25 times the cost of constructing the Hoover Dam. The Big Dig was plagued by a series of problems like leaks, poor building materials, collapses, and even a death. And it is seen as a huge failure to this day. Hey there, welcome back to our channel. Today you'll be shocked to learn about some outrageously expensive megaprojects from around the world that were abandoned, delayed, stayed empty, and cost way more than the initial estimate. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you do not miss our future uploads. So let's get started without further ado and have a look at some ridiculous failed megaprojects. Number 1. Ryugyong Hotel, North Korea. Surprisingly, the Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, North Korea is the tallest unoccupied building in the world. Yes, you heard that right. This Hotel of Doom is an unfinished 105-story and 1,080 feet tall building. The abandoned pyramid-shaped skyscraper dominates the skyline of North Korea's capital city, and it never hosted a single guest. The construction started in 1987, and it was planned to open in 1992 for the birthday anniversary of President Kim Il-sung. But the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union forced North Korea to compromise when it lost its main trading partner and source of aid. A sudden spur of economic problems led the building to stand topped out without any interior fittings and windows. It has later become clear that North Korea does not have the resources to finish the construction. The hotel was intended to house more than 3,000 rooms, 5 revolving restaurants, casinos, nightclubs, and more. But where were the people who would occupy such a ginormous building? It all seems like a not-so-carefully thought-out attempt to impress the world. What's even more bizarre is that the building was included in North Korean maps and depicted on stamps long before the construction was finished. But since the construction halted, they all had to be removed again. It wasn't before 2008 that they installed its glass panels, and it was decided that the hotel would be open to the public in 2012. Even a partial opening was announced in 2013, but later got canceled. In 2018, LED mirrors were displayed on one side of the building, now used to show film scenes and propaganda animations. But seriously, who are they fooling? This failed and completely useless hotel cost a whopping $40 billion, which makes up around 5% of the country's entire GDP. And now an estimated $2 billion are needed for the final touches. It was built to outcompete the South Koreans and impress the world. In the end, it did not impress anyone, at least not in the positive sense. Number 2. Forest City, Malaysia. Forest City is a $100 billion megaproject funded by Chinese developers in Malaysia. It is described as a green and futuristic city built on 3 artificial islands just outside the international hotspot, Singapore. The city was built with an integrated ecological system and was marketed heavily as an energy-efficient, ecologically sensitive, land-conserving, low-polluting offshore city. Here, the residents could enjoy futuristic and modern lifestyles, with streets filled by vegetation. The roads were even put underground to make room for pedestrians, and the skyline of Singapore was only a short drive away. That sounds great, you would probably say. But unfortunately, there's a few problems. Because the apartments were planned to serve as second homes for wealthy Chinese families, the real estate prices of Forest City are set specifically for the Chinese buyers, and local Malaysian citizens can't afford to live there. The Malaysian government eventually grew tired of foreign investments in the country and tried to ban Chinese citizens from moving there to avoid foreign colonies that excluded the local Malaysians. The Malaysian Prime Minister stated that the project is built for foreigners, not for Malaysians. That's why they are struggling to get enough actual people to live in this futuristic green city. And though Forest City was meant to house around 700,000 people, there are supposedly as little as 500 people currently living there. For now, Forest City is still a long way from being an actual city. Progress has halted due to bad planning, political events, and last but not least, the outbreak of COVID-19. The Chinese developer Country Garden has already suffered huge losses and is struggling to finish the project. And if that's not enough, this ghost city, which is marketed as green, has actually gotten a lot of criticism for hurting the environment, specifically the marine life nearby. Ouch. Number 3. Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository, Nevada, US. So get this. First, the US spent a lot of time and effort to find a place suitable for storing dangerous nuclear waste. But after digging a $19 billion hole in the ground, plans had to be changed. What happened? The Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository in the state of Nevada is another example of the most ill-fated, high-profile ventures of all time. Plans for a safe place to store nuclear waste had already started in 1989. This project was approved in 2002 with a plan to build the biggest repository storage within the Yucca Mountains for spent nuclear fuel and other dangerous radioactive chemicals. Being in a deserted location, it seemed like the perfect option, but unfortunately it was later put on halt due to health concerns and religious opposition. Some scientists were particularly concerned that the waste might leak into groundwater and poison it. Local groups have protested, and now this immense underground tunnel might never see the light of day. In 2020, it was heard that Donald Trump strongly opposes the further funding of Yucca Mountain Repository, and its proceedings are not even part of the Biden administration's plans for nuclear waste management. The general perception is Yucca Mountain isn't an ideal site to house the nation's high-level nuclear waste, spend it for beneficial purposes, and save future generations. Numerous unresolved scientific issues were raised, like its geology, location, limited space, transportation, and national security. So for now, it remains a really, really expensive hole in the ground. Number 4. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. Ciudad Real Central Airport, also known as Don Quixote Airport, is a giant abandoned airport located in the city of Real in central Spain. This mega project cost more than $1.3 billion and was opened in 2008. At the time, it was intended to be the capital Madrid's new main airport and to solve the problems with its existing overcrowded airport. It was built with one of the longest runways in Europe and was suited for 10 million passengers annually. However, from the very beginning, the airport ran into construction delays and financial problems. It got hit hard by the 2008 economic crisis, and the airport's train station, intended for high-speed trains, was never built. During its years of operations, it only received flights from Vueling and Ryanair. Unfortunately, only after 3 years in 2012, it was closed with a huge loss of time, money, and effort. By that time, the management had accrued a debt of over $300 million. The project went bankrupt after just 4 years and has remained empty and ghost-like ever since. The main problem with the airport was that it was located in the middle of nowhere, around 200 kilometers away from Madrid. This location was specifically chosen as it was halfway between Seville and Madrid. But very few people live nearby, and since it was way too far from the cities, people were naturally hesitant to go there. Some have even stated that the airport was not really needed, and an overly ambitious project funded by cheap credit. By the way, if you're a fan of the TV show Top Gear, you might remember this airport from some of their episodes, given that the runways are excellent for driving fast cars. The airport also became famous for being sold to a Chinese company for as little as 10,000 euros, which surely must have made it the cheapest airport in the world. Why buy a car when you could buy an airport instead, right? Number 5. Naypyidaw, Myanmar. Talks about waste of time and huge amounts of capital on failed megaprojects are incomplete without discussing Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw. Naypyidaw is an entirely planned city. The military leadership wanted a new capital away from overcrowded capital Yangon. The city of Naypyidaw is perhaps the world's weirdest city. It is a vast, desolate space filled with government buildings, deserted hotels, golf courses, a giant pagoda, and huge, empty 20-lane highways. Who needs a 20-lane highway anyways? But there's one crucial thing the city lacks, namely people. Despite covering an area that is much bigger than both Berlin and New York combined, the city has very few inhabitants. And despite the highways that are built to impress, it's actually time-consuming and expensive to get around the city. You can use an hour driving on empty highways from one place to the other without even seeing more than a vehicle or two. Than Shwe, who was Myanmar's former military leader, put forward a brainchild idea that the country needed a new capital due to the old capital's heavy traffic and continuously growing population. But some say the military junta is paranoid about invasions, and it is said that the city is full of underground tunnels and bunkers. To be fair, you can land military aircrafts on the highways. Despite attempts to get people to move to the capital, the city has still not yet been settled. Though civil servants were ordered to move in here, but mostly kept their families in the previous capital of Yangon. Construction cost amounted to over $4 billion, both in development and alleged displacement of local communities to set homes for the military. But despite the epic investment and efforts, diplomats and foreign aid workers only travel to the city for meetings, rather than set a base there, and the city almost remains empty. And that's not all. The city is home to Naypyidaw International Airport, a 135,000 square meter airport built to handle 3.5 million passengers annually. But like the rest of the city, it is also, of course, almost completely deserted. Coming in last at number 6, we have a little town called Burj Albabas in Turkey. This Disney-themed ghost town in northern Turkey was originally built for wealthy tourists from the Arab Gulf countries. The complex included plans for Turkish baths, shopping centers, sports stadiums, and entertainment areas, and the plan included more than 700 houses. But because of a real estate crisis in Turkey, the developing company went bankrupt. Construction halted, and the houses have stood abandoned ever since, turning the area into a creepy ghost town. Due to the low building quality and lack of maintenance, a lot of the houses have started to deteriorate. And while the Disney town is highly unpopular with the local residents, the site has sparked some interest from international tourists due to its utter weirdness. So the next time you're planning a trip to Disneyland, you might want to consider Burj Albabas as a cheaper and quirkier option. So, which megaproject is the biggest flop of all? Do let us know in the comments below and share with us if you know about any abandoned megaproject. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.